Smith Show starts right now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, ESPN News, 250-plus markets across the United States of America. Check your AM, FM listing nearest you, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM, Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up, as always, is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Stephen A. Smith Show, obviously. Straight Talk Wireless, one of the people that we communicate with, supports this show. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks. Let's get right to it. Lots of stuff to get into today. A lot of NFL action to talk about tonight. Derek Carr, Oakland Raiders, Antonio Brown. They're set to go up against Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals. We're looking forward to that. For some reason, Aaron Rodgers playing in a preseason game is actually news, which is very, very insulting to me. One of the greatest quarterbacks, I think the greatest talent at the quarterback position we have ever seen, is playing in a preseason game tonight, a meaningless preseason game tonight, and y'all want to act like it's back page news. He's Aaron freaking Rodgers, okay? Preseason games means nothing to him. He has nothing to prove. His greatness has been validated and authenticated throughout the years. Over the last 2 years, broken collarbone, week 3 or 4 against Minnesota and Anthony Barr, he goes down for the rest of the season. Last year, he gets injured game 3 into the season and still plays the rest of the season. And oh my God, stop the presses, because he was god-awful. He was absolutely awful, right? Completed 63% of his passes, throwing 25 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions in all 16 games. Just 2 interceptions. And we got to stop the presses. We acting like this brother's the second coming of Lamar Jackson. Can't throw right now. And that's not to disrespect Lamar Jackson for the Baltimore Ravens, because I think he's going to be really, really good. We know that he's got those wheels on him and he's special, but he's got to learn to throw the football based on what we saw in the playoff game against the Los Angeles Chargers for the first 3 quarters. But it's just absolutely asinine to me why this kind of stuff is news, but that's neither here nor there. Later on in the show, I will tell you why I think that the Los Angeles Lakers should be the favorites to win the NBA championship. I will tell you why I think the Brooklyn Nets should consider giving Carmelo Anthony an opportunity to be on their squad. So that's some of the other things that we're going to talk about today. But obviously, I got to get into a couple of things because I'm a bit agitated. I'll be the first one to admit this. I'm a bit agitated. And it stems from my conversation about this whole Jay-Z situation with the National Football League, collaborating with them to address social justice issues and what have you. Definitely being a part of their being an influencer, somebody that's going to be in control of their halftime entertainment as well. Obviously, these are kind of things that we're going to talk about. But the first order of business in a relatable item is to talk about Dolphins owner Stephen Ross and Dolphins receiver Kenny Stills finally meeting up with one another. As you know, Stephen Ross, the owner for the Miami Dolphins, scheduled to throw a fundraiser for the President Donald Trump. Kenny Stills, the wide receiver, was opposed to that because he pointed out Stephen Ross's work throughout the years with the Rise Foundation, which promotes social justice and racial equality in sports, and how he felt that was inconsistent with throwing a fundraiser for the president. And he spoke out against his owner in that regard, basically with those words. He did it without meeting with Stephen Ross. He did it on Twitter. And finally, the two met with one another, and according to Kenny Stills, they've agreed to disagree. According to an article in Pro Football Talk, the two men have met since last week's controversy fueled by the owner's decision to host a 6-figure fundraiser for the president. Stills had told the Palm Beach Post via ESPN.com that he and Ross have, quote, agreed to disagree. Stills said, quote, there's not much to argue about. He has his feelings about it, and he stands firm in that, and I respect that. But I disagree, and I told him there's no hard feelings. There's no beef, and let's win some games this year, end quote. The article goes on to read, Stills agreed to agree with Coach Brian Flores, who has lamented the fact that Stills didn't meet with Ross before publicly commenting on a perceived disconnect between the creation by Ross of the Rise Foundation. Quote, I definitely think from a professional matter, the right thing to do would have been to reach out to Ross first, Still said. But through conversations that we have and the history that we have, it gets to a point where I'm just a person that is sharing the message, letting other people know what's happening, end quote. What's happening is that the NFL owners who have openly supported President Trump without backlash are beginning to experience some of it, and that NFL players are increasingly unwilling to stand silent. That's according to Pro Football Talk. Good job on this story. Here's the deal. I don't disagree with Kenny Still's message. I do agree with Coach Brian Flores, who said you should talk to the owner first. He is our boss. Have a conversation with him. Let him know where you stand. As opposed to him finding out on Twitter that one of his employees is calling him to the carpet for something. And see, this is where we get into dicey territory. We get into dicey territory. Because when you talk about the National Football League, working in partnership, in concert, with Jay-Z and the Roc Nation, you have some people, I believe some people have gone too damn far. I really, really have. Because when I see some of these comments by guys like Eric Reid, who's famous for kneeling, don't get me wrong, he can play some football. He's a safety for the Carolina Panthers. But he spoke out against Jay-Z. Says he's burying Colin's career. That's what he accused Jay-Z of doing now. Okay? It's going a little bit too far. Colin Kaepernick's lady, who's known for speaking her mind. And by the way, listen, highly intelligent young lady is definitely entitled to her opinion and standing by her man the way that she does. Personally speaking, I think is admirable. I've got nothing bad to say about her. But I will tell you this. I just think that people are looking at this picture all wrong. And I'm sick and tired of folks getting away with it, to be quite honest with you. I'm really sick and tired of folks getting away with it and looking at this picture all wrong. A guy like Eric Reid, safety for the Carolina Panthers, blast Jay-Z for his new partnership with the NFL, saying it looks like the rap mogul is selling out and helping bury Colin Kaepernick's career. Really? We gonna mention the word sellout and Jay-Z in the same sentence. From the streets. Rap impresario, mogul, businessman. I'm a businessman. Noted writer, justice writer. That's what he was when he worked at the New York Daily News. Sean King, who I got tremendous respect for, he sat up there and said to Jay-Z's a capitalist. No argument there. He is. He's right on point with that. But it seems like people are lining up to go after Jay-Z. And I don't understand it. I'm really at a loss for words about it. First of all, if you're Eric Reid, think about some of the things that this dude has said and done. Yes, he's taking a knee with Colin Kaepernick. Yes, he's bringing attention to racial inequality and injustices that have been exacted against the black community. I'm a black man. What could I possibly say negative about that? Of course, I appreciate where Eric Reid is coming from. But it does get to a point where it's a bit excessive. The Players Coalition, led by Malcolm Jenkins, you had a problem with that. You felt they co-opted the movement. So what do? You confront Malcolm Jenkins on the football field at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. A game is about to be played. Hasn't started yet. And you turn an NFL game into something like that. And then you wonder why somebody like you or Colin Kaepernick would be frowned upon. Because you have patrons out there who pay to watch a football game that didn't come to the stadium, an NFL stadium, for that. Why is that relevant? Because Eric Reid is on the record saying they did not have a problem. They did not have a problem with the National Football League. That's what Eric Reid said. That's what he went on Twitter and said. We didn't have a problem until, and I don't have the tweet in front of me, but he was basically saying the NFL promoted systemic racism, what have you. Listen, here's the deal. You didn't have a problem with the NFL The NFL really didn't have a problem with you until they felt that their bottom line might be compromised. Colin Kaepernick was kneeling for weeks. Nobody said anything. Marshawn Lynch admitted on several occasions he didn't stand up for the national anthem. NFL didn't say anything. Why? Because in their collective bargaining agreement, unlike the NBA and Major League Baseball, which mandates you stand for the national anthem, the NFL didn't mandate it. They strongly encouraged it, but they didn't mandate it. And because they didn't mandate it, a player was free to exercise their right not to stand for the national anthem. NFL didn't say anything. It wasn't until it was brought to the attention of the masses, and then the president sat up there and said he'd fire those SOBs, that all of a sudden the issue took on a life of its own. That's the fact. Let's get to some other facts while we're talking about this, because it's time that people wake up and recognize what the hell's going on here. Eric Reid, blackballed. Don't you have a job in the National Football League? I'm sorry. Didn't I see Eric Reid playing for the Carolina Panthers last year? Is he not still collecting a check from the Carolina Panthers? Is he not still employed by the Carolina Panthers? I think he is. Colin Kaepernick, blackballed. Okay, I kind of believe that's happening as well. But are we going to ignore wearing a Castro shirt in Miami while contemplating being a Miami Dolphin when the Cuban populace there exceeds 30%? A Castro t-shirt in support of Fidel Castro in Miami. Do we forget that the Baltimore Ravens were going to sign him? But the girlfriend, his lady, no disrespect to her, but she went on social media. Maybe let me correct that. It was either her or him. I'm not sure. I don't recall. But they too, both of them were associated with comparing Ray Lewis and owner Steve Bisciotti to the characters in Django. Samuel L. Jackson and Leonardo DiCaprio. Samuel L. Jackson being the epitome of a quote-unquote Uncle Tom, and Leonardo DiCaprio being a slave owner. Did we forget that? Did we forget that he had an opportunity to land in Denver with John Elway, but didn't want to accept the deal? Did we forget the fact that he had an opportunity to end up in Seattle and Pete Carroll said, "What is your plan?" and he didn't have one? They didn't know whether you were going to continue to kneel or not. They didn't know what kind of trouble you were going to be willing to cause. If football was going to be your priority. Ladies and gentlemen, I just named you 4 teams. Seattle, Miami, Denver, Baltimore. All of them were going to bring Colin Kaepernick on. All of them. Every one of them. And Eric Reid still has a deal. Eric Reid is playing in the NFL. And oh, by the way, he goes on Twitter yesterday and said, "I'm going to stay in the NFL's you know what," while he's collecting a check from an NFL team. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to dudes getting in trouble, and that's not these guys, their character is not to be impugned. Stephen A. Smith is not on this radio show talking about the character of Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid. It is not to be impugned. And I'm not talking about Colin Kaepernick at all, with the exception of pointing out he did have 4 offers coming his way. As it pertains to Eric Reid, I got one problem with Eric Reid and one problem only. It seems as if you don't do exactly what he wants you to do, exactly the way he thinks you should do it, you a sellout. You co-opting. And where has that gotten us throughout history? You know, not to get too historical with y'all, but I remember how the great Malcolm X, who I revere and deify, once called out Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I also recall him later years apologizing for that. And there being a meeting of the minds with people understanding there are roles that each individual has to play. Martin Luther King played one role, Malcolm X played another. Martin Luther King, peace, give peace a chance. Malcolm X, eye for an eye. I'm simplifying it. Obviously, it was more complicated than that, but you get the message. Last time I checked, we revere both. Who's to say that there's one way to skin a cat? Here's the reality. When you look at a Jay-Z in partnership with the National Football League, what was Jay-Z essentially saying? Keep on protesting. I have nothing against any kind of protest. What I'm saying is it's all about things turning into actionable things at some point in time. Yes, you protested, but now what is it about? Where's that getting you? If you're Colin Kaepernick, the goal was to bring attention to addressing racial inequality and injustices in our nation. Hasn't he achieved that? I'm talking about specifically what he said his intent was, to bring attention to it. There is a deal with the Players Coalition for $89 million to contribute to causes pertaining to African American and desolate communities within our nation. It doesn't stop there. There's a plethora of things that the NFL has been doing. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on in this show. And Jay-Z, sellout? Really? With all the things that this man, through his music, through his entrepreneurship, the African Americans he employs, he not just cashes checks, he cuts them. Talk about from rags to riches, where he's from to where he's at. What he has done, what he has epitomized, what he has represented in our community. You would call him a sellout just because he did a deal with the National Football League? Have you lost your damn minds? Really? The NFL is in partnership with with Jay-Z and Roc Nation. The objective is to do things that make a difference in a positive way towards our community. There is no question that the cachet that the NFL has, being the number one sports brand in our nation, there is no question about the positive impact it can ultimately have if it's committed to doing the right things. Jay-Z wasn't talking in front of that microphone and those cameras by himself. Roger Goodell was sitting right next to him on behalf of 32 owners who, by the way, most of them might not give a damn about these issues. But who are we to legislate people's minds and hearts? At the end of the day, if they're donating their resources to the right issues and the right causes, what the hell do you care? Why does that matter? Do you really give a damn that I care what Bob McNair or the Texans actually thinks? Or Daniel Snyder or somebody else? If they're pointing their resources in a direction that ultimately benefits our communities, isn't that the bottom line? Who the hell told you or anybody else that you get to legislate what's inside people's hearts? And oh, by the way, forgive me if I'm a bit pessimistic or skeptical about my ability to affect an 80-year-old billionaire who happens to be white and is separate and apart from the black plight as you can get as a white billionaire in his 80s or their 70s. Forgive me if I'm not optimistic about that. But guess what? There's a younger generation on the come up. And if those resources are pointed in the right direction, connected with the right people whose hearts are in the right place, and they're committed to doing good, and that in essence has the power to influence the younger generation on the come up, white, black, Hispanic, and otherwise, what do I care? And if that ultimately is what it's about, what is your problem with it? Are you going to tell me you're going to sit here with a straight face after all the things that Jay-Z has accomplished in his career, after all the things that he has achieved and has done, after the issues that he's through his music and beyond, all the things that he's addressed as it pertains to the black plight, the minority plight in this nation and throughout this world, are you going to tell me you're going to legitimately associate the word sellout with him? How fair is that, Eric Reid? How fair is that? As a black man, I appreciate the fact that Eric Reid's heart's in the right place. I truly do. I appreciate the fact that Colin Kaepernick's heart may have been in the right place. I truly do. But if I disagree with an approach, or if I disagree with this one thing that you may do, that doesn't mean I'm against you. It means I respectfully disagree with that. I disagree with Eric Reid going up in Malcolm Jenkins' face on Lincoln Financial Field before a game to address this issue. I disagree with that. He's wrong. You can't run into Malcolm Jenkins at any other time? You're going to jump in his face before a National Football League 1 o'clock game on a Sunday afternoon on the field in Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia to address this? It ain't right. You think that your way is the only way. It ain't right. You think everything is about Colin Kaepernick getting a job when Colin Kaepernick himself said, it ain't about me. It's about us. I don't like the fact that Colin Kaepernick is without a job. I think he deserves a look. You can't tell me that Colin Kaepernick can't be a backup quarterback in the NFL right now. But 4 teams wanted to bring him on board. He wanted their uniform. He wanted their money without wanting to give anything in return as to what they felt they would need to make sure their bottom line isn't compromised. Who do you know gets to take that position and get a job in America? White or black or Hispanic or Asian American or Native American? Jews, Gentiles, doesn't matter. Who gets to do that? Who gets to have their hand out for somebody else's money and before they even get it, say, look, kick rocks. I'm going to do what the hell I want to do. Suck it up and deal with it, but give me your money. Who gets to do that? Who gets to do that? Y'all know the answer to that question. Grow the hell up. Stop acting like you don't know. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. That was Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less. Only at Walmart. We'll get to your calls and more in a minute before John Fox comes on with us to start off hour number 2. Talk some NFL action. By the way, do you have frequent heartburn? Like the kind where you have an acid stashed everywhere in case it pops up? You know what I mean. You keep some in your bag or your desk or your car or... And all the money that he's gotten over the years, he deserves most of it, living your best if not all of it. These past couple weeks, nobody's trying to rain on the parade that is Eli Manning. We know what a good dude he is. Party in the Bahamas. We get it right now in Las Vegas. We really, really do. But I got to tell you, to see the concessions thrown in his direction by John Mara reminds me of the privileged few that still lives in our society. Everybody ain't getting that kind of treatment. There's a whole bunch of people that would be consummate professionals that would act right and what have you. Tom Brady ain't even getting that kind of treatment from Bill Belichick. Went to 3 straight Super Bowls. Won 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. Bill Belichick wouldn't even give him a multi-year deal. Yeah, you can go ahead and be a free agent at the end of the season if you want to. It's okay. We'll be all right. Prior to that, before he became porn star Jimmy Garoppolo was a backup in New England starving for his opportunity. Bill Belichick wanted to get rid of Tom Brady just to put Jimmy Garoppolo up in there. You can't make this stuff up. Tom Brady, consummate professional, personification of a company man, saying all the right things, doing all the right things the right way in their eyes, being incredibly appreciative and supportive of the ownership with Mr. Kraft and his son, Jonathan. And still, he's at the mercy of Bill Belichick. Yeah, we'll give you a one-year deal, basically. But Eli Manning, he just keeps trucking along, able to survive, rather, for an elongated period of time. I got to tell you something. It's a problem. Somebody needs to say something. Somebody needs to be honest about it. We just need to do that. It's just that simple.
Jay-Z has created the level of autonomy, becoming a mogul to be able to now push this and take it a step forward and carry the baton.
The NFL trying to mend fences. The NFL did a lot of damage to its relationship with its African-American fans with everything that happened with Colin Kaepernick.
It's just an opportunity to bridge a gap, to bring all sides into the room and create a level of credibility that benefits all involved.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Welcome back to Stephen A. Smith Show, 32 minutes past hour number one. Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Pick from a range of coverage options with the Name Your Price tool to find a price that works for you. Before I go on, let me make sure that everybody understands. I was speaking about Bob McNair in general. I am fully aware that he passed away last December. Okay? So my condolences again to him and his family. We talked about that when it happened, and I was on a radio show at that particular moment in time. I was just speaking about the Bob McNairs in general because of what his position was at that particular moment in time before he passed away. But I'm fully aware that he passed away in December of 2018. So I just want to let everybody know this. Before I get to the calls, let me read a couple of things to y'all because this is all public knowledge. And the NFL, obviously, having to pay attention to some of these issues. Let's keep in mind, because remember, Colin Kaepernick protested racial inequality, racial injustices, police brutality, the incarcerated and some of the unfair sentences that have been handed out to Black Americans and beyond. The NFL, obviously, politically charged issues of race, immigration, gun control are things that they felt the need to address. That was brought to their attention by the Players Coalition. And remember when they made the deal with the Players Coalition, the goal of making an impact on social justice and racial inequality and racial equality at the federal, state, and local levels through advocacy, awareness, education, and allocation of resources. Okay? I'm reading from the NFL. I mean, this is public knowledge. This is public knowledge about NFL operations. Okay? When you talk about the situation in regards to their partnership with the Players Coalition, okay? Player Coalition members have directly lobbied elected officials, prosecutors, district attorneys, attorney generals, and worked with established, proven grassroots advocacy organizations to address the aforementioned issues. Clubs have provided funding and grants to grassroots organizations in their markets with a proven track record in the social justice space. Players and legends have provided funding to additional grassroots social justice organizations across the country, far beyond club markets. Okay? Let me give you some example. November 2018, voter rights. In Florida, the Players Coalition, led by Anquan Bolden, pushed for the restoration of voters' rights to convicted felons who have completed all terms of their sentences, including probation and restitution. but excludes those who are convicted of murder or sex crimes. The ballot measure passed on Election Day last November with more than 60% of the vote. It restored the voting rights to 1.4 million Floridians. Additionally, Adalius Thomas, Takeo Spikes, Algie Crump provided support to voters in Georgia, and Malcolm Jenkins and Chris Long helped with voter transportation in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. March 2019, education policy and state legislators. In Massachusetts, New England's Patriots Devin McCourty, brother Jason McCourty, and Deron Harmon testified before a joint committee of state senators and representatives in the Massachusetts legislature in support of the Education Promise Act, seeking to bill by Senator Sonia Chang Diaz, Reps Aaron Vega, and Mary Keefe addressing funding disparities in the state's school funding formula. April 2019, mandatory minimum sentencing reform. In Philadelphia, Malcolm Jenkins and former Pittsburgh Steelers Will Allen partnered with the advocacy group Families Against Mandatory Minimums to tour Spring Garden area, Philadelphia school zone, and discuss the impact of drug-free school zones on urban communities with heavy minority populations. From 1999 to 2002, Families Against Mandatory Minimums found that 84% of drug possession offenders in Pennsylvania school zones were residents of color. In Massachusetts, 80% of school zone drug offenders are people of color, and in New Jersey, it's at 96%. Both Jenkins and Allen expressed concern and opposition to the mandatory 2-year prison sentence added to sentences a judge renders for the charge of drug possession in a school zone. The Pennsylvania lawmakers in attendance were Representative Jason Dawkins, Senator Anthony Williams, Representative Joanna E. McClinton, and Senator Sharif Street. 2019, August. That's this month. Prison overcrowding. In Alabama, Takeo Spikes and Adalius Thomas authored an op-ed in the Montgomery Advertiser, the state's largest daily newspaper, calling on Alabama Governor Kay Ivey to call a special session of the Alabama State Legislature to address prison overcrowding. Additionally, the NFL supported federal criminal justice reform in December of 2018. The First Step Act, signed into law by President Trump, gives federal judges more leeway when sentencing some drug offenders and boosts prisoner rehabilitation efforts. It also reduces life sentences for some drug offenders with 3 convictions or 3 strikes to 25 years, allows about 2,600 federal prisoners sentenced for crack cocaine offenses before August 2010 the opportunity to petition for a reduced penalty. It also incentivizes prisoners to participate in programs designed to reduce the risk of recidivism, with the reward being an earlier release to either home confinement or a halfway house to complete their sentences. If you recall, Van Jones of CNN, who obviously is no Trump supporter, absolutely positively applauded the president on that particular issue. My question is simple. It's 2-part. Number one, if you're Colin Kaepernick or Eric Reid, isn't those the kind of things you were talking about addressing? And number two, having said all of that, is there any other league doing all of this? You see, I don't know the answer to that question, the second question. I'll let the NBA, MLB, and others speak for themselves on that. Or if there's anything that they want to enlighten me about in terms of what they're doing, I'll be happy to get it and read it on the air. I just went to the NFL website for this one. What I am saying to you is that there are a plethora of things going on that are directly addressing the concerns Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid purportedly have. It's not like nothing's being done. It's not like it hasn't gotten any attention. It's not like it doesn't continue to need attention. But the point is, if you're Jay-Z, you could potentially take this to another level. Why do we not? Has he not earned the right for us to actually see what he does? And Nuno, my producer, could you please put that quote up that Eric Reid just sent out 20 minutes ago? Because he's talking about Jay-Z again. Talking about him again. Safety for the Carolina Panthers. Employed in the NFL, talking about the NFL at every turn. Quote, this is Eric Reid, 20 minutes ago. Jay-Z doesn't need the NFL's help to address social injustices. It was a money move for him and his music business. The NFL gets to hide behind his black face to try to cover up blackballing Colin. I have a question, particularly for the black community out there. Did Jay-Z deserve that? Did Jay-Z deserve that? You haven't seen what he's done yet. You have no idea what he's going to do. Does Jay-Z really need the money of the NFL? I mean, can we be real here for a second? A money grab? He's not you, Eric Reid. Jay-Z is worth close to $1 billion. You act like he's you. He's Jay-Z. A money grab? I have no problem with Sean King's statement about him being a capitalist because obviously business is a part of everything he does. But it's not everything. The way Eric Reid stated it is everything. Jay-Z? Money grab. He deserved that? See, this is why I have a problem with Eric Reid. You have to do things exactly the way he thinks. Otherwise, you're a sellout. And for you non-black folks out there, let me tell you something. One of the most heinous things you can call a black person, if you are black, is to call them a sellout. It's one of the most heinous things you can do. Eric Reid just flippantly throws that out there. Like it's no big deal. Jay-Z and sellout. That's what he's saying. Put that quote back up again, Nuno. I'll read it again. Jay-Z doesn't need the NFL's help to address social injustices. So says Eric Reid. It was a money move for him and his music business. The NFL gets to hide behind his black face to try to cover up blackballing Colin. Eric Reid, do you need the NFL football field to take a knee? Do you need to play in the NFL in order for your message to be heard? But it ain't stopping you from taking the knee, and it ain't stopping you from playing in the NFL. So you get to do what you want to do while getting paid to do it. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, I don't think Eric Reid is playing for free in the National Football League. I think he's getting paid to do that. But you want to count other dudes' money and how other dudes utilize their influence. I don't see how y'all can support that. We haven't even seen what Jay-Z has done yet. It's wrong. It's cruel. Unfortunately, on yet the latest occasion, we've also seen it's Eric Reid. Damn near physically attacked Malcolm Jenkins. And now verbally assaulting Jay-Z. Doesn't even see it. Hasn't even seen what he's done yet. Wow. Wow. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. To your phone calls and more, we shall go. It's live. Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. If you missed any of my opening segment, go check it out on demand at the Stephen A. Smith Podcast. Brought to you by the Capital One Quick Silver Card. Earning unlimited 1.5% cash back on every purchase everywhere. Hey, what's in your wallet? Because of a calf injury sustained in April, supposedly, Andrew Luck has only practiced 3 times since April. No OTAs, no training camp practices. Everybody's looking at him now. They're wondering, they're questioning. Folks are very, very worried about him. I got it. I understand it. I'm not that worried. I wish I could tell you I was that worried, but I'm not. Because I got to tell you something. I believe in Andrew Luck. And I understand that he's been a bit fragile or whatever. Here's what I will remind you of. I got some belief in Andrew Luck's talent, but I damn sure believe in Frank Reich as a coach, and I definitely believe in Chris Ballard as general manager. You see that offensive line he gave Andrew Luck last year? Do y'all know that Andrew Luck, his first season back after missing the entire previous campaign in 2017, do y'all know that Andrew Luck went 5 straight games without suffering 1 sack? This is after the dude was getting sacked above 45 times a year and hit more than 100. This offensive line, led by this dude, Quentin Nelson, monsters. Monsters. They don't play. And they protect their man, Andrew Luck. So you got that going on. Also, T.Y. Hilton's still there last time I checked. You did acquire Devin Funchess in the offseason, who used to be in Carolina. He's a big target. This kid, Paris Campbell, a rookie. Everybody's been raving about this kid out of Ohio State and what a speedster he is and what kind of damage he could ultimately do. That's a plus. You got a familiar tight end in Jack Doyle that's back in the mix after he was injured part of last year. Eric Ebron, we know he could ball. And oh, by the way, Marlon Mack can run the football too because he's got an offensive line that knows how to block. I got news for y'all, ladies and gentlemen. If Andrew Luck is somewhat healthy, the Indianapolis Colts are a Super Bowl contender. I don't give a damn what you saw in the playoffs against Kansas City last year in that storm, in that snowstorm. Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts are a team to be reckoned with.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
From the biggest concerts and games to the hottest theaters and theater shows and more, Vivid Seats has it all. Download the app and join the Vivid Seats Rewards loyalty program. 52 minutes past hour number 1, back in the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. At the top of the hour, we'll have John Fox, our NFL analyst for ESPN, on discuss some of tonight's game that's going to take place. Kyler Murray going up against John Gruden's Oakland Raiders. We're going to see Aaron Rodgers this preseason as well, talk about some of those things. And obviously, I'll get to the calls as well. My last point about Eric Reid is simply this. You know what? You can disagree with the deal. You could disagree with Jay-Z. The disagreement is not what I have an issue with. The disrespect and basically calling him a sellout is what I disagree with. And I would like to add, you believe Jay-Z did a money deal. He's getting paid by the NFL. How you going to say something when you getting paid by the NFL? Eric Reid does play in the NFL. He is an NFL player. How are you going to excoriate and vilify a man for taking a check from the same entity you're taking the check from? You could say that he doesn't need it, but it doesn't negate the fact that you're getting paid by the NFL too. Just a thought. Hour number 2 up next with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Well, my parents met.
The Stephen A. Smith Show starts right now.
$3.776. The Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by the new Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Now with 4 levels of defense against gunk, wear, corrosion, and friction. We'll get to the calls in just a few minutes. But on the line with us right now is an NFL analyst for the family, former coach for the Carolina Panthers, who won an NFC championship in 2003. Former coach of the Denver Broncos, who won an AFC championship in 2013. Former coach of the Chicago Bears, now an analyst for the family. The one and only Coach John Fox is on the line with us. What's up, Coach? How are you, sir? How's everything?
Doing great, Stephen A. It's great to finally be on with you, man.
Man, please, it's a pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. Let me get right to it by putting you on the spot. You are John Fox. You are John Fox. You have the #1 overall pick. Okay? Don't think about the team for a second. Just think about the quarterbacks. Kyler Murray, Dwayne Haskins, Daniel Jones. Who would have been your pick?
I got to be honest with you, Stephen A., and I would definitely go Kyler Murray. I honestly think that he has the explosion and evadability of a guy I know, these are big shoes too, of Michael Vick. Mm-hmm. And yet I think at this point in the offense he ran at Oklahoma and really kind of the similarities that he's going to run with the Arizona Cardinals, I really like this guy's touch and accuracy and his ability to be able to deliver the ball from different angles, which as a mobile quarterback, I think, and I say that because he does it with accuracy.
Mm-hmm. And I asked that question.
I'm looking for big things.
I tell you why I asked the question. The hesitancy with him obviously was his height. That would not have been a profound issue for you?
Not really. Even evaluating Russell Wilson when he came out, that was a big question in our building at the Broncos was his height. But he did play behind the University of Wisconsin, the biggest offensive line in football. I know it's college, but the guys he played behind were actually bigger than any NFL offensive line at that point in football. So it's finding windows, and some guys have that ability. So the height becomes a little bit less of a factor.
John Fox right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. The Arizona Cardinals, led by Kyler Murray, the #1 overall pick in this past NFL draft, is playing the Oakland Raiders tonight. What have been your thoughts about the Oakland Raiders, particularly with the whole Antonio Brown helmet fiasco? Some people would look at it and say that's a distraction that they clearly did not need. It's indicative of things to come. Others say it's a blip on the radar screen. How does John Fox view that whole scenario?
Yeah, I think more of a blip on the radar, Stephen A. And, I think, Antonio's had different things with him, even with the Steelers. But the thing he had above all that was his production on the football field as a wide receiver in the National Football League. And I think ultimately, that's what the Raiders were looking at. And, I think they didn't have those type of weapons for Derek Carr a year ago. And I think, when we get into the regular season and we start playing real games for real, I think you'll see the pluses of Antonio Brown.
How are you feeling about Derek Carr at this stage and point in his career? I mean, he was playing lights out a couple of years ago under Jack Del Rio before he got hurt the second to last game of the season. Obviously, they got shellacked in the postseason because they didn't have a quarterback, so they didn't win that postseason game because they didn't have Derek Carr. But then last year, obviously with John Gruden's first year there, even though he, his completion percentage was up and what have you, his yards were up. The bottom line is that there are people that are looking at Derek Carr and wondering what his future is going to be with that organization because there's some question marks about him. How do you feel about him based on your years of experience being an NFL head coach and working with quarterbacks as extensively as you have? What do you see from Derek Carr?
I think he's an outstanding player. And like you, Stephen A., I go back to when, Jack Del Rio was the head coach and the weapons he had around him. And what I mean by that is not just on offense, but the guys they got out there that play defense, and that's critical on any team's success. So last year I pretty much viewed the Oakland Raiders as almost an expansion team because of, the approach they took in trading away some of their key players and their key weapons as a football team, and then not able to replace them until the 2019 draft, which they've done now. So, and some of the cap room and money they spent on veteran football players in the NFL, I think they spent about $55 million just revamping the skill positions on offense. I think the draft they utilized. They did take the first-round pick, running back out of Alabama,
Josh Jacobs.
I think,
yes,
John Jacobs, and I think that's going to be, that's a quarterback's best friend is the run game. So I look for Derek Carr to and I look for the Oakland Raiders to be a much improved football team here in 2019.
But you know what I pay attention to, Coach? I pay attention to competition. And what I mean by that is it's real nice and dandy to sit up there and say, as many people have, that the Oakland Raiders, we're expecting big things from them, better things from them. Okay, I expect you to be better than 4-12. The flip side to it is look at the division that they're in. Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes. You've got Denver. Joe Flacco's their quarterback right now. Certainly he's not what he used to be, but he still can throw the football. And then, of course, you have the Los Angeles Chargers, who some are predicting might potentially make the Super Bowl, led by Phillip Rivers. So I'm looking at the division that the Oakland Raiders are in, and I'm saying, excuse me, based on that alone, you're going to have some problems.
Right. Yeah, I'm not picking them to win the division for all the reasons you just mentioned. There's no doubt. I think Denver, let's not forget, in my opinion, will have the best defense in the division. And they're able to run the ball. But at the end of the day, you're right. I just think they'll be more competitive within the division. I think they'll be more competitive with everybody on their schedule. How much of a jump? I do think they can win 8 games this year, and that's a marked improvement.
John Fox right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Let me go to the Washington Redskins for just a second here. They play the Cincinnati Bengals tonight. Dwayne Haskins out of Ohio State threw 50 touchdowns in the Big Ten. Obviously, he's got an arm, can make all the requisite throws. Threw 2 interceptions in his preseason debut last week sometime. But a lot of people, particularly in New York, felt like that was the pick that should have been made instead of Daniel Jones out of Duke. Where do you fall in that line of thinking, A? And B, what do you think about Dwayne Haskins with the Washington Redskins this season?
Well, I think, I can understand. I know a lot of the coaching staff there at Duke. I followed Daniel Jones because he played his high school football in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, which is where I've maintained a home over, about the last 15 years, familiar with his family. And I know the coaching that he got at Duke. I can see, and then even in his first outing, as an NFL player, although it was, not a lot of opportunities, but he was very impressive. I liked both of them. I actually had Haskins a little bit ahead of Daniel in the draft coming out, to be quite honest. I think they both have bright futures. I'd say off of one game in the preseason that Daniel Jones had a little bit better outing, but that's not saying much. I mean, I think there's still a lot of football and learning to do before they get to the regular season. But I like both players and high on both of them.
Educate my listeners about this. How much stock should we place in the preseason? Could you put that in perspective for folks that just may not know?
Well, they're not real games, and I think sometimes that's frustrating for fans. But they're real for coaches because they're evaluating players. Let's not forget, there's 90 players, and they have to pick 53 guys that are going to be imperative in what kind of season they'll have in the regular season. So they're learning new systems, it's how they fit, and create a culture in a building. From how to practice to how to have meetings to everything's just different. I mean, these kids now they don't have biology class. They don't have history class. It's all football and just time management and how to become a professional. Those are all things that these guys are having to digest for the first time. So I think it's exactly what it is. It's practice, and it's practice games. And you see how guys respond to competition, to the things they see, and things happen quickly. And, you're being evaluated every snap. They do it in practice, but these games, and particularly for quarterbacks, are critical because backup quarterbacks and who your third quarterback's going to be, all those things, there's more evaluation of the game reps than there are practice reps.
John Fox, NFL analyst for ESPN, right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Just a few more questions before I let you get on out of here, Coach. I want to switch to the Houston Texans and Jadeveon Clowney. He hasn't signed his one-year tender. The July 15 deadline came and went, no long-term deal. You're talking about the Texans being second amongst all NFL teams with more than $37 million in cap space, according to Over the Cap. I'm reading from an article on NFL.com as we speak. Where do you fall along those lines? Bill O'Brien has basically basically the de facto GM. They don't have a GM now that Rick Smith and Brian Gaine is out. But when you look at the Houston Texans, how valuable is Jadeveon Clowney to them? What do you think will happen in this particular situation? Because it appears to be as if he's on his way out. And I'm wondering what kind of impact do you think his potential absence will have on Houston's expectations for this upcoming season?
Well, I would be very concerned if I'm Bill O'Brien if he's without Jadeveon Clowney on that defense. I think he's, that kind of an impact player. In fact, I thought he was probably the most critical free agent, on that side of the ball, in the offseason. It didn't surprise me that they did tag him, franchise tag him. But the fact that he has not signed that yet is definitely concerning. But I still think it's going to come down to I don't see him sitting out, not playing a la Le'Veon Bell. And I also think that depending on where they are in the negotiation process of the long-term deal, that still has a chance of getting done before the regular season starts as well.
Coach, before I let you get on out of here, a lot of noise is being made in New York about Sam Darnold and how he looks and what an upside they're expecting from him this year. Adam Gase was in Miami for the last 3 years, didn't have success 2 of those 3 years, but one of those years he took them to the postseason. Wondering where your line of thinking is as it pertains to Sam Darnold and what you expect and what your New York Jets fans expect from him this upcoming season, based in part on a guys that he has available to him at his disposal, along with the new coach that he's playing for.
Well, I think again, Sam or Adam is an offensive-minded coach, very good coach. He coached with me in Denver, had Peyton Manning there, and had great success with. But I think the style of offense. I think Adams an outstanding offensive mind. I think will help Sam Darnold. But more critical than that to me is again, supporting cast. The moves they've made as far as weapons, because a quarterback can't do it by himself. He has to have guys that can win matchups, and this game is about matchups. So I kind of like what they've created there. I think they'll play pretty scrappy defense. I think, but I think they'll compete in that AFC East division this year, and I really like the outlook for the New York Jets this fall.
Last question to you. Give me your sleeper team to watch, a team that we're not paying enough attention to that you think can make some real noise in each conference, the AFC and the NFC this year.
Well, I was just at the Eagles camp. I really like the football team that Howie Roseman has assembled there. And I'm a real fan of Carson Wentz. I think he's got both the weapons around him this year. It all revolves around health, Stephen A. And, that's unpredictable. But I really like them as an NFC team. Not like that it's going to be a big surprise. But, even the fact last year with a bunch of injuries, they were able to, get into the playoffs in a tough division and, go to Chicago and beat a pretty darn good Chicago Bear team. On the AFC side, aside from the teams that have had a lot of success, I think the Raiders will be much improved. I don't know that they're quite there yet to be a playoff team, but I see them kind of taking a jump from 4-12.
Got you. John Fox, appreciate you, buddy. Looking forward to watching you on TV today and in the weeks and months to come. Thank you so much, buddy. You take care.
All right, Stephen A. Thanks for having me on.
All right, thank you so much. John Fox, former head coach with the Carolina Panthers, Denver Broncos, Chicago Bears, went to 2 Super Bowls as a coach. He's right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Really thank him for his time. Let's get back to the calls as I promised, or to the calls as I promised. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Let's go right to it. Curtis, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you, Stephen A., for just being great imagery for us black men out here in America. So once again, just thank you for that.
Thank you.
But what I want to get to is I would love for the media to stop saying this is police brutality and stay what it is. This is domestic terrorism. And has come to a great shock that the flag that we pledge allegiance to has not pledged allegiance to us. So instead of us wondering about what Jay-Z...
Stop right there. Stop right there. Let me interrupt you for a second and ask you a question. Is it fair to say brutality on the part of some police officers as opposed to police brutality? Is that, I mean, when we consider the number of crimes, the inordinate number of criminals, the violence that's being perpetuated throughout our society, et cetera, I'm not about to sit up there and give law enforcement officials a pass. But by and large, most law enforcement officials do their job. There's rogues everywhere, in every industry. And the police officers, the policemen are no exception. So I get that. But do you mind my being careful by trying to taint them with a broad brush? Because I know black police officers, white police officers, Hispanic police officers that literally do what they've sworn to do, and that is to protect and serve. Is it beyond the pale to sit up there, Curtis, and be fair-minded enough to say brutality on the part of some police officers, as opposed to police brutality, like painting the entire industry of police officers with a broad brush? Is that fair?
No, that's not. I wouldn't say it's not fair. I consider police officers like referees. There's good refs and there's better refs, and unfortunately, those bad refs get noticed more. But there's still you have to still talk about each side. So for us, for a black man, for a young, for just young people in general, I have to see that.
Curtis, I'm sorry to interrupt again. I apologize because I got your point, but I want to get back to something. Black folks are dying. You're a black man. Is that correct, Curtis?
Yes, sir. Proud of
black folks are dying, right? And you say to some degree, obviously, by the hands of some police officers. Is that correct?
Yes, but also by us as well.
Yeah. Do you know that in the streets of Chicago, it had gotten so bad that you had black folks on national television calling for the National Guard to come in because it's that kind of war zone? Did you know that?
Yes.
Okay, so why is it that we're talking about police brutality like it's some epidemic without acknowledging what we're doing to ourselves?
I wouldn't, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about anything else, because that's the one thing. We are the ones to break the mold. We are the ones to have to stop this epidemic.
And I applaud you. And I applaud you for saying that. But you do realize you called up and you pointed out terrorism and mentioned police officers without mentioning what we're doing to ourselves. You do understand that?
Yes, sir. With our thing, I just would say it was when it does come down to that, when there are moments that this is a travesty, like there's certain things that are pointed out in the media. That's when we need to start. Well, that's at those moments we need to call it domestic terrorism instead of it just being police brutality. Because now it's became, when you hear that word, a lot of people just have a blind eye, like, oh, it happens every day, so whatever. But when we use when we use that terminology, I think it will awaken some other people that might not know what's going on both sides. So when blacks are killing blacks and when whites are killing whites.
I got you.
But also.
I got you. I appreciate your take. Thanks a lot. Feel free to call back anytime. I get where you're coming from, Curtis. I totally understand. And I don't disagree with you. Thank you for the call. Let's go to Darren. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Darren?
Stephen A., appreciate you. Listen,
thank you, bro. Go ahead.
I got a lot to say, but I'm trying to make it quick.
Go ahead.
I'm a 52-year-old black man, African-American male. I'm a retired firefighter. So trust and believe I've had this Colin Kaepernick debate with white coworkers and as well with brothers in the shop, the barbershop. So now, it's a very important topic. So, first of all, I completely agree and understand and respect Kaepernick for taking a knee. And I also completely agree, respect, and understand Jay-Z for what he just did with the accomplishment he made. But I want to draw a real quick point. You read Jay-Z's statement yesterday, and I'm going to paraphrase. The very first sentence in that statement was, we have gotten away from the original intent and message of Colin Kaepernick's taking a knee. Now, my question I have for you is this. I truly believe in my heart that if Colin Kaepernick, before that game that he took the knee in, I'm not sure if he tried this or not, but if he had called over a reporter, heck, if he would have called a press conference and said, hey, right, when I go out here on this field today, I'm going to take a knee and explain exactly why he was taking a knee. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. He wasn't the first player to take a knee, but the other players before him were back over by the Gatorade table or back by the trainer's table, back by the bench. He was the first one, and I respect him for this. He went out front, literally and figuratively, and took the knee on the sideline out in the plain view of everyone. But without saying something beforehand, he left it up to interpretation. He left it up for them to think of why he was taking a knee. Whereas if he had said something right before that, he could have snuffed all that out, and they wouldn't have been able to dilute it, distort it to being something specifically against the flag or whatever they were trying to say back then.
Well, Darren, my response to you is that I appreciate your point of view, but I respectfully disagree. And the reason why I respectfully disagree is because of this reason. I think that people who misconstrue and misinterpret his message are people who simply want to do so. Just because he didn't initially explain before taking a knee doesn't mean that they were confused. He made it very, very clear when interviewed in the locker room after the game what his intent was. And there are people who wanted to misconstrue it. The president is guilty of that. The president hijacked the issue and did so successfully because he turned it into an issue of patriotism with his constituency. And as a result of that, it was hijacked. And it morphed into something that it had no business being morphed into. That is what happened. It's not that people were clueless as to what he was doing. It's that they didn't care because they chose to believe someone other than him as it pertained to what the real issue was about.
Real quick, number two, I was listening to your man Sway this morning. They were talking about this. And this controversy between whether Jay-Z and Colin had a conversation. Colin's girlfriend said they didn't have a conversation. There's this controversy with that. And also, Sway was talking about these rappers today. They got to have a beef with somebody or they got to do something controversial to draw attention to themselves. I want people to understand something. And at this morning when I heard that, I was thinking exactly in my mind something that you just brought up just now on your show about MLK and Malcolm X. I agree with you wholeheartedly. People understand that when you are going to be out front and outspoken, especially on these topics, there is going to come along with it some controversy, okay? People are going to try, like you just said, they're going to try to hijack your message regardless of what it is. In my opinion, Eric Reid is ignorant. And the statement that he made about Jay-Z is ignorant. You got to weed through the nonsense, weed through the noise, get to the roots of what is being said and what is being done.
All right.
That is all I got. I appreciate you. I'm going to listen to your comments. Thank you.
I appreciate you. I got to go to commercial break, but I'll be right back, and I'll definitely comment on what you just had, what you just finished saying. Thank you for the call. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Back with your calls and more in a minute. By the way, do you have frequent heartburn? Like the kind where you have antacids stashed everywhere in case it pops up? You know what I mean. You keep some in your bag or your desk or your car or your... And all the money that he's gotten over the years, he deserves most of it, if not all of it. Nobody's trying to rain on a parade that is Eli Manning. We know what a good dude he is. We get it. We really, really do. But I got to tell you, to see the concessions thrown in his direction by John Mara reminds me of the privileged few that still lives in our society. Everybody ain't getting that kind of treatment. There's a whole bunch of people that would be consummate professionals that would act right and what have you. Tom Brady ain't even getting that kind of treatment from Bill Belichick. Went to 3 straight Super Bowls. Won 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. Bill Belichick wouldn't even give him a multi-year deal. Yeah, you can go ahead and be a free agent at the end of the season if you want to. It's okay. We'll be all right. Prior to that, before he became porn star Jimmy Garoppolo was a backup in New England, starving for his opportunity. Bill Belichick wanted to get rid of Tom Brady just to put Jimmy Garoppolo up in there. You can't make this stuff up. Tom Brady, consummate professional, personification of a company man, saying all the right things, doing all the right things the right way in their eyes, being incredibly appreciative and supportive of the ownership with Mr. Kraft and his son, Jonathan. And still, he's at the mercy of Bill Belichick. Yeah, we'll give you a one-year deal, basically. But Eli Manning, he just keeps trucking along, able to survive, rather, for an elongated period of time. I got to tell you something. It's a problem. Somebody needs to say something. Somebody needs to be honest about it. We just need to do that. It's just that simple.
He has created the level of autonomy, becoming a mogul to be able to now push this and take it a step forward and carry the baton.
The NFL trying to mend fences. The NFL did a lot of damage to its relationship with its African-American fans with everything that happened with Colin Kaepernick.
It's just an opportunity to bridge a gap, to bring all and create a level of credibility.
Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Say ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Let's get right to it. Let's go to Jim. You're live with Stephen A. Go ahead.
Hey, Stephen A. Hey, on Kaepernick, in my opinion, his talent doesn't equal his his distraction doesn't equal his talent. That's why he's not in the league. The Broncos offered him money. He wanted starter money.
Stop right there. Let me ask you this question. Did his talent meet the distraction 3 years ago?
What was that?
Did his talent meet the potential distraction 3 years ago?
No, I don't think so. I think he was beaten out by Blaine Gabbert twice the last 2 years.
That's what I needed. That's what I needed to know from you. I needed to make sure that you wasn't equating it to him being away from the game for the last 2+ seasons. I needed to make sure that you were alluding to it back then, because then that would be fair. If you were alluding to it now, well, of course he's been away from the game now, so that's a legitimate question mark. But it's also unfair because he's been kept away from the game. But if you felt that way back then your point is significantly more valid. You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, no, maybe I misunderstood what you say. What I mean is when he last played, he was one of the, he had 2 bad years and he was beaten out by Blaine Gabbert. And since then, he's been looking for like starter money and all that stuff. Even the Broncos offered him a contract, but he was looking for starter money. So I just think his talent doesn't equal the distraction. And I think that's why he's in the league, in my opinion.
I appreciate the call, man. Thank you so much. Let's go to Mike. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Mike? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm all right. Thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Mike, do me a favor. Hang up and call back, and I'll put you back on. Your signal is garbled, and we can't hear you. So call back when you have a clearer line. Ray, you're live with Stephen A. What's up, Ray?
Stephen A., how are you?
All right, go ahead.
A couple of points. I think the point, first of all, I agree with lots of what you're saying. I think you're authentic. I really respect what you have to say. You're a practical guy who brings forward facts. But one of the things that you tread lightly with that I think you shouldn't is one of the things that Reid said when you said that Jay-Z, and I am far from calling him a sellout. I don't know nothing about his life. I don't know what kind of effort and resources he put in to his community to make things better. So that aside, the one thing I think I have a right to question, though, is his intent without calling him a sellout. And when Reid said it's about his brand, it's about him making money, and you saying, oh, he doesn't care about making money, I don't believe that for one second.
I didn't say that. I said he's a businessman. That's what he says. I said he's a capitalist, as former justice writer for the New York Daily News, still out there doing a great job in his own right, and Sean King pointed out that he was a capitalist. I certainly did not imply that he does not care about money. What I said is that's not what he's all about. You know, he definitely will speak his mind, and he will speak up and tackle issues. And how about giving the man a chance to see what he does and then judging it accordingly? And the other thing that I denigrated about Eric Reid's statement is Eric Reid said he's putting a, quote, black face on the NFL blackballing Colin Kaepernick. Come on now, that's a bit excessive. It really is.
I think it's excessive, but no one, black, white, green, blue, should be able to profit off the unfair sentence that a 19-year-old black man receives in this country today. So
whoa, you lost me. What do you mean a 19-year-old black man? What are you talking about?
Well, part of what this fight is about, which I'm on, I'd like to think that I'm on the right side of the fence regarding social justice.
Oh, no. I thought you was. I was just making sure you wasn't calling Colin Kaepernick 19 years old. I'm sorry, sir.
No.
Okay, that's what I was saying.
No. Jay-Z, nor should any mogul, white, black, green, purple, should they be able to profit in this country if they are that sincere about creating change, the kind of change that Martin Luther King.
All right, stop right there, Ray. Because I hear you, and when I say soapbox, I'm not denigrating or disrespecting you in any way. I'm just saying I hear where you're coming from. But I would say this to you. If I remember correctly, I don't know. I think I read something with a former Vice President, Al Gore, or a former presidential candidate, former Secretary of State for the United States, Hillary Clinton. I forgot whoever it was. Somebody wrote a story, if I remember correctly, about them, you know, in terms of being in business in the private sector as it pertained to prisons. Now, I don't know what business that was or whatever, but there are, the incarceration has been privatized. You do know that. You are aware of that. And you are aware of people that are politicians, that are very influential figures, significant people in this world that have, and again, forgive me if I'm wrong, I don't know for sure whether it was Al Gore or Hillary Clinton, but I think I remember that somewhere. But you can double check that. I guess all I'm trying to say is that because the prison system has been privatized to some degree, we have entrepreneurs, we have affluent individuals, I dare say we have elected politicians that have played a role, directly or indirectly, in terms of monetizing our prison system. So the very thing that you're saying, we've had people long before Jay-Z or anybody else ever came along that does that. And last time I checked, Colin Kaepernick, Eric Reid, they're not in the prison system. And the issues that they brought to our attention, Jay-Z working in concert with the National Football League, how about we pay attention to actionable things that have actually transpired as opposed to questioning their intent? How about that? We look at politicians every day. Wouldn't you agree with this, Ray? Politicians every day give us cause to pause because of their own individual agendas. They do things to garner votes, to garner support, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, what we judge them on is how effective the policies that they promoted and assisted in implementing actually are. So ultimately, we've got to judge the effect of people's actions as opposed to the motivation or agenda behind it. Wouldn't you say that?
I would. That assumes that two wrongs almost make a right, and it also assumes that we should be outcome determinative. That's where you and I are going to strongly disagree. We need to stand up. We need to fight that. I'm in disagreement with privatizing prisons. Read about the
fight
stories.
What, Ray?
Read about
Fight what? Fight. No, hold on, Ray, hold on. Stay with me, because I don't want to confuse my listeners because it's a sports show. But listen to what I'm saying to you. Ultimately, you're telling me, based on what you're saying, if somebody does something that positively affects the masses, it should be ignored because of what the intent was, and that may not have been it. I don't agree with that. That's what I'm saying. Do you understand that, Ray?
I do understand that, and when you state it that way, Stephen, you make an absolutely strong case for why we should look the other way and just look at the result. However, let me just put this forth. If we do so much of that looking the other way, eventually the foundation collapses.
But I'm not saying, but I agree with that, Ray, but I'm not saying look the other way. I'm saying ultimately focus more attention on the effects of what's actually done. There have been plenty of things in our society that we look at, and we may question someone or an individual group or an entity. We may question their agenda, but at the end of the day, we have to remember to pay more attention to the positive impacts it has on the innumerable number of lives, as opposed to an individual's agenda or objective. I'm not saying turn the other cheek. I'm not saying don't pay attention to it. I'm not saying don't be a watchdog and keep an eye out for it. But ultimately, the agenda is about helping as many people as we possibly can, as opposed to one's individual agenda behind it. That's what I'm saying takes priority. I'm not saying to ignore anything, but you have to prioritize. And the priority has to be what affects the many. Sorry to steal a line from Spock in Star Trek, but the lives of the many outweigh the lives of the few. And I think that is a good way to focus on things. That's all I'm saying, Ray.
I would agree with you, and certainly if I would disagree that the outcome is the most important thing, it would be irrational. But I would say go a bit easier on Reid. I know I'm just talking about Reid's Ray, I'm not talking about Reid's I'm not talking about Reid's position. I'm talking about Reid's flagrant disrespect without even seeing what transpires. You don't have to talk to Jay about Jay-Z like that. He hasn't done anything yet. You don't know what he's going to do. Why not wait and see? Yes.
That's all I'm saying. Appreciate the call, Ray. Thank you so much. 888-SAY ESPN. We'll close out the show with your calls in more than a minute. It's Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, when you're hiring, you don't want to waste time sorting through dozens of irrelevant resumes. You want an efficient way to get to a short list of qualified candidates. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job. Because of a calf injury sustained in April, supposedly, Andrew Luck has only practiced 3 times since April. No OTAs, no training camp practices. Everybody's looking at him now. They're wondering, they're questioning. Folks are very, very worried about him. I got it. I understand it. I'm not that worried. I wish I could tell you I was that worried, but I'm not. Because I got to tell you something. I believe in Andrew Luck. And I understand that he's been a bit fragile or whatever. Here's what I will remind you of. I got some belief in Andrew Luck's talent, but I damn sure believe in Frank Reich as a coach, and I definitely believe in Chris Ballard as general manager. You see that offensive line he gave Andrew Luck last year? Do y'all know that Andrew Luck, his first season back after missing the entire previous campaign in 2017, do y'all know that Andrew Luck went 5 straight games without suffering 1 sack? This is after the dude was getting sacked above 45 times a year and hit more than 100. This offensive line, led by this dude, Quentin Nelson, monsters. Monsters. They don't play. And they protect their man, Andrew Luck. So you got that going on. Also, T.Y. Hilton's still there last time I checked. You did acquire Devin Funchess in the offseason, who used to be in Carolina. He's a big target. This kid, Paris Campbell, a rookie. Everybody's been raving about this kid out of Ohio State and what a speedster he is and what kind of damage he could ultimately do. That's a plus. You got a familiar tight end in Jack Doyle that's back in the mix after he was injured part of last year. Eric Ebron, we know he can ball. And oh, by the way, Marlon Mack can run the football too because he's got an offensive line that knows how to block. I got news for y'all, ladies and gentlemen. If Andrew Luck is somewhat healthy, the Indianapolis Colts are a Super Bowl contender. I don't give a damn what you saw in the playoffs against Kansas City last year in that storm, in that snowstorm. Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts are a team to be reckoned with.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on The Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Brought to you by the Capital One Quick Silver Card. Earning unlimited 1.5% cash back on every purchase everywhere. Hey, what's in your wallet? 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Before we get on out of here, sorry, bad news for the Los Angeles Lakers. DeMarcus Cousins appears to have suffered a torn ACL. Wow. He can't catch a break. My condolences to him. Injuries, of course, this man, $150 million easy. Damn shame. It really is. My condolences. Jason, you're live with Stephen A. You only got 30 seconds. Go.
Yeah, Jay, how you doing, Stephen? Thank you for taking my call. I'm going to try to meter my emotions, but I just want to
I just need you to hurry up, bro. We only got a minute. Go ahead. Okay. Make your point.
All right. The situation is that every time we have a scenario where someone of prominence from a black community tries to do something, we're really quick to jump to conclusions. Eric Reid has the ability and the responsibility as the voice of this situation to sit down and have a conversation with Jay-Z to understand where his direction is. We have an organization here that largely has not allowed African Americans a seat at the table, and we have an opportunity right now to be great, to do something that we've never done before. And instead of doing that, now we're causing more division. I'm sure he has followers, Reid, that follows and listens to him. So does Jay-Z. So now we have another division in our situation in our ranks when we have an opportunity right now to make it.
Jason, call me back tomorrow when we have more time to talk, but I will leave you with this point to think about. Don't bring Jay-Z in this equation. Jay-Z hasn't said a word about Eric Reid. Not a word. This is Eric Reid throwing darts or pellets in his direction. Let's remember that, Jay. Let's remember that, Jason. Jay-Z hasn't said anything in response to Eric Reid. Nothing. Eric Reid sat up there attaching a black face to the blackballing of Colin Kaepernick. He's basically accused Jay-Z of being a sellout without having a conversation with him. That's on Eric Reid, man. Malcolm Jenkins, now Jay-Z. Talk to y'all in 22 hours. Until then, peace and love.
We're pretty